Okay, let's just get right into it. It's a huge question, maybe one of the most important of our time. Have we permanently damaged our planet's climate, or is there a way to actually reverse what we've done? We're going to get a clear, science-based answer on that today.
So, to start, let's ground ourselves with a number. 424 parts per million. That's the CO2 concentration in our atmosphere as of 2024. Now, to put that in perspective, that's about 50% higher than it's been for hundreds of thousands of years. This isn't just a minor tweak, it's a massive change to the air we all breathe.
And that change, well, it has consequences. In 2024, for the very first time, the world officially crossed an average of 1.55 degrees Celsius of warming for a full year. You've probably heard that 1.5 number a lot, right? That's because it's the critical line in the sand that scientists have been warning us about for decades.
Which brings us to the big one, the question at the heart of this whole explainer. It's what we all secretly wonder. If we could just snap our fingers, flip a switch, and stop every single emission on Earth, would everything just cool down and go back to the way it was?
Let me frame it another way. Is climate change like a stain on your favorite shirt? Something you can scrub out if you have the right tools and you work hard enough? Or is it more like a scar, a permanent mark that you have to learn to live with and manage for the rest of your life?
To really answer that, we've got to get a little more specific. It turns out reversible means very different things depending on which part of the climate system we're talking about. The science really breaks it down into three totally distinct layers.
Let's break this down. First up, you've got temperature. The good news here is that this part is actually pretty responsive. If we can figure out how to pull CO2 out of the air, the planet will start to cool down. Simple enough. But second, there are the CO2 levels themselves. This is where it gets stickier. A huge chunk of the carbon we've already put up there is going to stay in the atmosphere for 1,000 years or more. And third, the impacts. This is where we have to be really honest. This is where it gets permanent. Things like the Greenland ice sheet melting, sea levels rising, species going extinct, those changes are irreversible on any timescale that matters to us humans.
So that leads to this really popular idea you hear a lot, right? The idea that, hey, maybe we don't need to panic now because some amazing future technology will just come along and clean up our mess. But is that even realistic? Let's use an analogy here. The mop and the tap.
Now, what's so fascinating about this slide is the sheer scale of the problem it reveals. Look at that huge bar on the left. That's the 42 gigatons, that's billion tons of CO2 we are currently pumping into the air every single year. And the little bar on the right? That's the most optimistic guess for how much carbon removal tech we might have by 2050. I mean, the mismatch is just staggering. And this quote just nails it. Carbon removal technologies are the mop. We can use them to try and clean up the water that's flooding the floor. But it's almost useless if the tap, our global emissions, is still gushing water at full blast. Turning off the tap has to be priority number one. It's just simple logic. So really, we're facing a pretty clear economic choice. We can act now and invest a relatively small fraction of the world's economy to switch to clean energy and prevent the worst from happening. Or we can pick the fix-it-later path, and that means paying trillions for that carbon removal mop, while also paying for all the flood damage, the crop failures, and the other disasters that happened because we left the tap on for too long.
And here's the wild part. The tools we need to turn off that tap are getting cheaper and better every single year. Just look at this. The cost of solar power has crashed by an incredible 85% since 2010. In a lot of places now, it's literally the cheapest form of new electricity humanity has ever had.
Okay, so it's clear we can't just hit an undo button on the whole thing. And that brings us to a much more useful way of thinking about what's ahead. The real question isn't reversible versus irreversible, it's manageable versus unmanageable. So let's walk through three potential paths. There's a reversible-ish world. This needs huge, immediate action to stop warming around 1.7 degrees and then maybe slowly bring it down. Then there's a just manageable world at 2 degrees. We're talking more extreme weather, for sure, but societies can probably adapt if we invest trillions. And then there's the third path, a hard-to-manage world of 2.7 degrees or more. This is frequent deadly heat, widespread crop failures, and a high risk of global instability. The scary part? That's the path our current policies have us on.
And this quote, this is so important because it busts a huge myth. Passing 1.5 degrees isn't like falling off a cliff where it's game over and we all just give up. It's much better to think of it as a steepening slope. Every single step we take up that slope, every fraction of a degree we add, makes the climb harder and the consequences worse. Every tenth of a degree we manage to avoid makes a huge difference.
So, let's bring this all home. Let's deliver the final verdict.
After looking at the science, what is the real, honest answer to our big question? Is climate change reversible? So here's the bottom line. The answer is, well, it's nuanced. For temperature, it's partly reversible. With a massive, global effort, we can stop the rise and even start to cool things down a tiny bit. For the atmosphere's chemistry and the oceans, barely. Our carbon signature is baked in for millennia. And for the damage to ecosystems and ice sheets, the answer is a hard no. Those losses are, for all intents and purposes, permanent.
And that means we really need to reframe what we're trying to do here. The point isn't to build a time machine and reset the planet to the way it was in 1850. That's just a fantasy.
The real question, the choice that is right in front of us, right now, today, is about which future we're going to build from here. We are actively choosing with every single policy and every investment we make between a future that is going to be dangerous but hopefully manageable and one that becomes catastrophically unmanageable.
And maybe this is the best way to think about it. Reversibility isn't about looking at the past. It's all about our choices for the future. Every solar panel we install, every ton of carbon we decide not to pump into the atmosphere, it's a decision. It's a small piece of a future disaster that we are consciously deciding not to purchase. And that choice is still ours to make.